Welcome to Cyber Bytes, your weekly dose in the latest in cybersecurity news. I'm your host, Edwin Kwan, and today we're going to be looking at three connected developments in artificial intelligence and security. An AI assistant has autonomously exploited vulnerabilities in an Australian gym booking system. Australia's Signal Directorate and the Australian Institute of Company Directors have warned boards that frontier AI is fundamentally changing cyber risks, and new research into AI coding tools has documented widespread security and privacy failures reported by developers. Now, these are not separate stories because together they show how quickly the risk changes when software can interpret a goal, access systems, and take action without waiting for a human to approve every step. So let's start with what is believed to be the first known Australian case of an AI agent autonomously carrying out a cyber attack. An Australian was using OpenClaw, an AI agent software powered by Anthropic's Claude, and he was using it to book himself into a popular morning gym class. He was fourth on the waitlist and asked whether the assistant could move him up. The agent first discovered that the booking platform allowed reservations months in advance, further than what was intended. It then went further. It identified that the booking API did not properly check whether a user was authorized to alter another person's reservation. The assistant then went ahead and cancelled another gym goer's booking, moving him from fourth place to third. Now, the user had not asked it to hack the system, modify someone else's booking, or bypass the platform rules. When he asked the agent to undo the action, it said that it could not restore the removed booking. Now, that incident is a useful example of what AI safety researchers call the alignment problem. It means that this is a gap between the outcome a person requests and the method an AI system independently chooses to achieve it. The user's objective may appear harmless, but an autonomous agent can interpret that objective broadly and pursue it through actions the user did not anticipate or authorize. Autonomy of AI agents creates growing opportunities for systems to choose unexpected methods, including methods that an ordinary user would never have considered. The case also exposes familiar security weaknesses, such as insufficient authorization checks, excessive trust in automated actions, and no reliable recovery path when an action affects another user. The important change here is that the system was able to find and exploit those weaknesses while attempting to complete an ordinary task. Now, this brings us to our next story, which is a joint guidance from the ASD and the AICD. Now, its message is directed at boards. It says that frontier AI models are transforming the cyber threat landscape in ways that may rapidly invalidate existing organizational risk tolerances. The guidance described frontier AI models as capable of performing complex offensive tasks beyond the reach of conventional automated tools. And it highlights three capabilities in particular: identifying vulnerabilities and rapidly weaponizing them, chaining multiple low-severity weaknesses into high-impact compromises, and conducting malicious cyber activity with little or no human oversight. The guidance also warns that frontier AI lowers the technical barrier for malicious actors. A person who previously lacked the skill to discover and exploit weaknesses may gain access to advanced offensive capabilities, including by exploiting weaknesses in the guardrails of proprietary AI models or by illegally distilling those models. Now, this changes the operating environment for organizations because the issue is no longer limited to whether a particular vulnerability is severe in isolation. Several minor weaknesses may be combined at machine speed, turning an issue that was previously accepted as low risk into a pathway to a serious incident. That means existing assumptions about attack timeframes, legacy systems, and supplier exposure may no longer hold. For boards, the guidance frames this as a governance responsibility rather than a purely technical matter. Directors should be asking management whether the assumptions behind current risk assessments remain valid under frontier AI threat conditions. They should be examining whether small weaknesses could be chained into major incidents, whether the organization has sufficient visibility across third and fourth party suppliers, and whether incident response times remain adequate if attacks compresses from days to hours. The guidance also calls out the risk of foreign ownership, control and influence connected to reliance on particular AI vendors, as AI risk cannot sit in isolation within a technology team. It affects resilience, supply chains, vendor governance, and the organization's ability to respond when normal assumptions fail. Now, the recommendations are set across 4 time horizons. There are things for immediate priorities, which focuses on securing attack surfaces through approved configuration baselines, reducing software vulnerabilities through timely patching, and verifying that remediation has actually worked. In the short term, organizations should address legacy systems with compensating controls, strengthen identity and access management with phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication, restrict privileges to the minimum required for human users and AI agents, and update and test incident response and business continuity plans against frontier AI scenarios. The medium-term recommendation is to deploy AI defensively, but only in a secure, human-supervised and accountable way. Examples include vulnerability identification during software development, vulnerability scanning, and security event triage. Over the longer term, systems should be modernized according to the secure by design and secure by default principles across their full lifecycle. Now, let's go on to our last story, which looks at AI coding tools from the developer's perspective. We've got researchers from York University and the University of Calgary who analyzed 1.1 million Reddit posts. They identified 446 relevant posts and more than 6,000 comments about tools including Claude Code, Cursor, GitHub Copilot, and OpenAI Codex. Their conclusion was that tool makers have not consistently prioritized security and privacy by design. Instead, developers are often left to manage significant risks through individual configuration and ad hoc mitigation. The researchers argue that many problems come from the way these tools are designed and the access they receive, rather than the underlying AI models alone. Now, that distinction is important because safer behavior cannot depend entirely on every developer understanding the security implications of granting an AI assistant access to files, credentials, repositories, and production systems. Unauthorized file operations were the most frequently reported security concerns, accounting for 43% of security-related posts. Reports from AI tools deleting project directories or files without authorization, modifying files without explicit consent, and accessing content outside the active workspace. In one documented case, Claude Code executed a chmod +x command on scripts without user consent, so it gave it executable permissions. Operational safety issues accounted for another 24% of the security posts. Those reports include rapidly deleting the production, software as a service database, and Cursor deploying code to production despite an explicit instruction not to do so. Unsafe code generation represents about 20% of the posts, including 9 virus total detections involving Cursor-generated software and changes driven by hallucinations outside the scope of the original request. A further 15% describe tools ignoring users' instructions, allow lists, permission settings, or the .ignore files. The privacy findings are also just as significant. The study identified around 200 privacy-related posts, with 46% focusing on a lack of transparency. Developers reported uncertainty about what data the tools collect, retain, transmit, use for model training, or exposes to administrators. Unauthorized data access accounted for 24% of the privacy posts. The researchers also identified reports involving privacy leakage, unauthorized data collection and transmission, and failures in context integrity. In one reported case, a Claude desktop user received messages originating from another user's session. Now, that type of failure undermines confidence in the boundary between one user's context and another's, which is fundamentally a security and privacy requirement. Now, developers continue to adopt these tools because they provide productivity benefits and make software development more accessible, including to people without formal programming backgrounds. Now, that adoption makes secure default more important. The researchers identified 13 mitigation strategies that developers are applying independently across configuration management, code governance, data protection, isolation and external guidance, and they made 6 recommendations for tool makers, including architectural security guardrails, a verification layer for generated code, formal methods for assessing third-party tools' trustworthiness, sensitive file protection, and stricter permission controls. Now, taken together, these 3 stories today point to a clear shift in how organizations need to think about AI-enabled systems. The problem is no longer simply whether an AI model produces an incorrect answer. It is now whether an AI agent can access sensitive systems, interpret a broad objective, discover weaknesses, and take irreversible action without an effective control between intention and the execution. And that's it for this week's Cyber Bytes. I'm Edwin Kwan, and I will see you next time.